elsewhere. Russia's brutal war in Ukraine is grinding on. Russian forces are zeroing in on the southern eastern parts of the country, which they've already pounded for weeks, likely killing thousands of civilians. NATO and European allies are debating now and how to actually keep the pressure on Vladimir Putin. And for the latest on their efforts, let's turn now to William Glucroft, who's our correspondent with our partners Deutsche Welle in Berlin. So let's get the very latest from you. EU foreign ministers, as we understand, met earlier this week. What came out of that session in Luxembourg?
Well, there was a lot of solidarity for Ukraine and intent to keep the pressure on Vladimir Putin and prevent his war of aggression in Ukraine. But there wasn't a lot of substantive details to come out of that foreign ministers meeting in Luxembourg. There's talk of a sixth round of sanctions from the EU against Russian assets. But the question is, what exactly? There's a lot of pressure to put more sanctions, or sweeping sanctions, on all Russian banks. And of course, the big question is oil and gas. Is there really going to be an EU embargo of oil and gas, which I remind your viewers is extremely, extremely important here in the EU. Something like 40% of the EU's natural gas is from Russia. Now, there is a lot of support and growing support for those kinds of moves, very serious moves, but Germany is still something of a stick in the mud, one of a few countries, along with Hungary and some other EU members, that are still trying to hold back against the most punishing of sanctions that the EU so far hasn't signed up to.
Let's talk about the German officials as well. They seem to be at odds with one another over how much to help Ukraine. What seems to be the main disagreement there?
Well, again, weapons and oil gas. These are the two big sticking points right now, and pressure is mounting, even within the government itself here in Germany, to flip that switch, so to speak, to go a full embargo of oil and gas and to deliver Ukraine not just defensive weapons, which are things like anti-aircraft guns and missile defense, these sorts of things, and ammunition, but also heavy weapons like tanks and fighter jets. There is an offer on the table from a major German manufacturer to deliver older tanks immediately, as many as 50, that could be delivered within a few weeks' time. That would need the approval of the German government. Annalena Baerbock, the German foreign minister, has come out in favor of such a move, delivering those kinds of heavy weapons. Her boss, Olaf Scholz, the chancellor, he's a little more circumspect, and he's been getting heavily criticized for dragging his feet on making these kinds of big decisions, both on oil and gas and on major weapons deliveries. And you're hearing more and more voices within the German government and within the opposition saying it's time to make those kinds of decisions.
And tell us more about this. How are officials there responding to fears of the use of chemical weapons?
As we've been hearing, there's so far been no confirmed reports that chemical weapons were actually used, although U.S. and U.K. investigators say they are looking into it to see if there's any actual evidence of the claims from earlier this week. But there's still a lot of fear that chemical weapons could be used. Vladimir Putin and his allies have hinted at such action. So there's of course a history, a precedence of Russia using or condoning chemical weapons, such as in Syria. So there is a lot of fear, especially as this war gets more and more desperate and more brutal. And we've seen all of the setbacks that Russia has had and the major losses that Russia has incurred, that it may actually turn to using chemical weapons. What happens then is really uncharted territories. The United Kingdom, for example, has said all options are on the table if Russia uses chemical weapons. But what that means exactly is unclear, because NATO has made very clear that they will not engage directly with Russia. So what kind of hard power tools that NATO or individual NATO members have to really confront Russia should chemical weapons be used is really a frightening and very uncharted area in which we may be going. But again, there have been no confirmed reports that is yet the case.
Glucroft with our partners, the DW, thank you for giving us the latest. We'll return with more, particularly in the world of sports. Stay with us here on The Pulse.